Are you ready to navigate the new way to work? Forbes Books presents Dare to Care in the Workplace with Kathleen Quinn Botaw. Here's Kathleen.
I am thrilled to welcome this week's guest, who is a visionary entrepreneur with a passion for helping entrepreneurs. Adam Witty is the founder and CEO of Forbes Books, the prestigious book publishing arm of Forbes Media, where he helps prominent business leaders across the globe become authors and establish top authority in their fields. He has written 5 books, including his latest bestseller, The Authority Advantage. Adam, welcome to the podcast.
Kathleen, thank you so much. What a pleasure to be with you.
I'm so excited for this conversation because we met a long time ago and our friend Jack Daly introduced us. And Jack is one of your original authors, isn't he? And one of the ones who got behind the whole push?
He is. His first book dates to 2012.
Okay.
And of course, the great thing about Jack is when he finds something that he likes, he shouts about it from the mountaintops. And Jack was the one that kindly connected you and I. And we got to work together, of course, on your first book many moons ago, and then another book, and of course, many other projects since then. And it's been quite the ride.
And when Jack Daly and I had dinner in Denver when he was here for a speaking gig, he suddenly said to me, "Kath, you got to write a book." I go, "Jack, it's not on the list to write a book." He goes, "Kath, you got to write a book." And I would say the entire dinner, about every 10 minutes, he said, "You got to write a book." And so there I went. 2016, I wrote a book and we're off to the races, right? So everybody listen to Jack Daly, that's for sure, because he can make your life wonderful. So one thing I've learned from all of you, and you in particular, is the premise around authority marketing. And not everybody understands the authority marketing mindset. I really want to start there so our listeners can really understand how important that is.
Yeah, so when I began what was then Advantage Media and today is Forbes Books in 2005, Kathleen, at that time, I thought I was really in the business of helping entrepreneurs, CEOs, and leaders write and publish a book. Mm-hmm. And at the outset, and from an outsider looking in, that's exactly what we do. A big part of our business is business book publishing. You and Jack Daly are 2 of over 2,000 authors as CEOs that we've helped turn into best-selling authors. And what I realized after spending a few years in the business is that really what our authors were after was not just writing and publishing a book, but it was building their thought leadership, building their authority, building their personal brand. And I really began to lean into that and study it and develop some concepts with Rusty Shelton, who's a partner of ours in the Forbes Books business. And what we realized is that authority can be intentionally crafted and created. Mm-hmm. And in fact, if you look at leaders or CEOs or entrepreneurs around the world that have a household name that many people listening to this podcast would know, a great example is Richard Branson, mm-hmm. Founder of the Virgin Group. He built his authority very intentionally. It wasn't random. It wasn't simply by luck or happenstance, right? He wrote books and he started speaking and he had a radio show. And then, of course, Richard Branson did all of these incredible stunts that brought him more and more publicity and more attention and more authority. And, Richard Branson is one of many, many examples. What we realized is that, hey, there was a formula that you could follow to systematically and strategically build your authority. And it didn't have to result in you becoming the next Richard Branson, but it could result in you being the number one referenced authority in your industry, in your community, in your niche. One of the things that I've always believed as an entrepreneur is the riches are in the niches. And so unless you have the billionaire bucks like Richard Branson, most of us mere mortals, if we want to dominate our industry, we've got to laser focus on a niche or a sub-niche within that industry or within that marketplace. But when you do that, you really can create omnipresence, you can create thought leadership, you can really be seen as the go-to person. And so we developed a system and we developed a model in which we could then help CEOs and entrepreneurs strategically and systematically build authority. And it really is all about building and creating media that you own, sharing that media with other people, and getting them to see you as the thought leader with something to teach rather than an operator with something to sell. So in a nutshell, it's something now that we've been doing for over a decade, helping thousands of CEOs all over the world. And at the end of the day, it's not about selling more products or selling more services, although candidly, that's a very happy byproduct of it. It's about taking what you know as a leader and sharing that knowledge with others to help them. And I'll use you as a great example. You know, one of the biggest challenges that business leaders have is recruiting and hiring the right people. And you wrote a book on it. And in your book, in which you help business leaders solve for the people puzzle, which of course is one of the most vexing challenges in business, you provide great ideas, great insights, and plenty of ahas for people that are recruiting and hiring. All you've done, Kathleen, is take your body of knowledge through your industry leadership and experience. You've distilled that down into actionable takeaways that any business leader can use to improve their own business, and you put those in book form. Not trying to sell anything, just trying to help. And when somebody reads that book, there's a lot of people at the end of that book, they'll say, geez, I don't have the time to manage this recruiting and hiring process on my own. Let's go call Kathleen and see if her company can help us. And so that's what it is. Authority marketing, authority media is all about building thought leadership and teaching and sharing what you know with others. And that, as a byproduct, will create opportunities for your business.
Absolutely. And it's been a wonderful journey for me, Adam. Tell me a little bit about the difference between personal and professional brand, and that authority through that. Like, how closely are they aligned, because sometimes we lose ourselves in the work that we do versus who we are. Talk to us a little bit about that.
So I always start with a phrase that I believe is very true, and study after study bears this out, and that is that people buy people, they don't buy corporations. Even if you look at the biggest brands that anybody can think of, and I'll think of a brand like Southwest Airlines, you immediately think of Herb Kelleher, who is the founder of Southwest, who is legendary.
He was a lovely man.
You think about Starbucks. You think of Howard Schultz, right? You think of the Virgin companies, you think of Richard Branson. And if I say Apple, the first thing that pops into your mind is Steve Jobs, right? So these are the biggest brands in the world, worth hundreds of billions of dollars. And when I say a brand name, the first thing that most people think of is the person behind the brand. And so people buy people. They don't buy corporations. We're all familiar with corporate branding, corporate marketing. Let's use the term you use, kind of professional branding, right? And that's great. But at the end of the day, if people buy people and they don't buy corporations, then we've always advocated that there is wisdom behind building your personal authority brand. You as the CEO, you as the leader of the business, there is good reason to build the Kathleen Quinn Votaw brand. Yes, you do all of the corporate marketing and all the corporate branding for the company that you're the CEO of. And I'm not telling you to stop doing any of it. What I'm saying is, and simultaneous, you should be building the Kathleen Quinn Votaw brand. Because number one, it's much easier for you to teach as a thought leader than for a corporate brand to teach as a thought leader. Because we learn from people, we don't learn from corporations. You can write a book, but it's really hard for a company to write a book.
Right.
You can host a podcast, but it's a little more difficult for a company to host a podcast, right? Your personal brand is going to connect with people more authentically than a corporate blog, a corporate branded blog. And so you have to build authority media around the leader, right? In this case, you're the leader of your company. So it's never been a one or the other. We've always been an advocate of and doing both of them. And so the whole idea is that people buy people, they don't buy companies. And as a cherry on top, at some point, you as an entrepreneur, like many, are going to sell or exit your business. And so if you spend your entire career building your corporate brand and then you sell it, what do you have left? It's not your brand anymore. Hopefully you accepted a large check and that's a
Did everybody
nice...
just hear Adam Witty? Large checks, people.
And so hopefully that soothes that you just lost your baby. But at the end of the day, if you sell your company, you just sold your corporate brand. But the one thing that can never be sold, or most likely can never be sold, is your personal brand. So if you build your corporate brand and build your personal authority brand, then even when the next gig comes along, when you exit your first business and you decide it's ready time to start your second business or to move into consulting and speaking and teaching, well, you've got your personal brand already created to leverage these new doors of opportunity after your primary business is behind you.
Lots of things to unpack in what you just said. Wonderful commentary there. From an M&A perspective, how do you protect yourself from being perceived as too relevant in the organization? Because that's one of the reasons companies don't acquire companies, because, the company's too reliant on that one person's personal brand. So obviously I'm drinking the Kool-Aid, but how do you distinguish between Kathleen Quinn Botaw and the company and not get too close to the flame where buyers, people who might buy your company might go, company might be too reliant on her or him. That would be interesting to hear your thoughts on that.
I actually think there's a way that you can turn it on its head and use your authority brand as an advantage and as a value enhancer to your primary operating business. And as an example, we use the names Herb Kelleher and Howard Schultz and Steve Jobs and Richard Branson. And I would argue that their personal authority brands are larger than any of their peers in their industries. And their companies were also the most valuable in the industry, right? Southwest is a great example that for a long time, their market value was larger than every other major airline combined, right?
Exactly.
And Herb Kelleher was the name that people knew, whereas nobody could tell you who the CEO of Delta or United or American was. So I don't, and they still can't. So I don't believe that those two things are inextricably linked. But let's talk about how to thread the needle properly. And we'll use me as an example. So I'm the founder and CEO of Forbes Books. And of course, I put a lot of time and energy into growing Forbes Books. But I also have my personal authority brand. So you can visit me online at adamwitty.com. And of course, I've written many books, and those books help drive business and opportunity for Forbes Books. But of course, I'm the author. And so the way that you thread that needle, I think, is number one, you have intellectual property agreements between the business and the individual. And so in this case, Kathleen, you're creating lots of intellectual property, and you are lending your intellectual property to the business to benefit it. So when you write a book, you own the intellectual property in the book. You're essentially leasing that to your company to use for its benefit. And so if somebody wants to come and buy your business, that's fine and great. And they're going to buy the business. But if they want to continue to utilize your intellectual property, then they're going to have an agreement with you post-purchase where you're going to get a fee, you're going to get a royalty, you're going to get some type of monetary compensation for it, right? And if they wanted to buy the rights to all of the intellectual property that you created for a flat fee, then you could negotiate that with them. One of the things that we find is that a lot of operating businesses, if they are purchased and the founder CEO is a a larger than life personality. The buyers will actually then sign an ongoing services agreement with the founder and CEO to continue to create content that benefits the operating business. And so for these entrepreneurs, it's kind of like a way for them to have their cake and eat it too, in the sense that they sell their business, they're able to get a check for selling that business. But on top of that, they now have an ongoing income stream and they continue to remain relevant. Most entrepreneurs aren't really made to retire anyway.
No, we're not.
And so, they sell their business, but they don't really want to go play golf every day. And so now you don't have to, because, hey, Kathleen, we need you to write another book, and hey, we need you to speak at these conferences, and hey, we need you to continue to create your blog, and we need you to continue to host your podcast, which is going to benefit the operating business that we just purchased from you. And we're going to pay you a fee to do this ongoing work. So I think it's all about threading that needle very carefully. But I would argue that our history has shown, our case studies have shown, that actually the more powerful your authority brand, you can use that as a driver of value in your business, not something that suppresses it.
That's perfect. Thank you for sharing that, because you're actually creating more value than less value for yourself and for the company, because you become the authority and the lead generator, but then you add more value to the company overall, and then more of a runway for you when you decide to go do something else. So it's a perfect model to start building your authority. And remember, the Jack Daly who brought Adam and I together, he was 60 years old, 65 years old before he wrote his first book. So, there's no time like the present and no age stamp on it for when you should or shouldn't, but you should start building your authority for yourself and your family. And one of the other things you said that I want to touch on, people buy people. Well, in my business, Talent Trust, and in both my books, we talk about recruitment is a sales process. And one of the most important pieces is building that employment brand. And people also choose people and they quit people. So your company has grown dramatically since I've met you. Congratulations, by the way. And you've made best places to work several times. People buy people, but people also choose people. So talk a little bit about that, because this is Dare to Care in the Workplace podcast, So talk a little bit about how you have helped people choose Forbes Books, and that people not only buy people, but they choose people in your organization.
I think most businesses, really all businesses at the end of the day, are in the people business, and some even more than others, right? My business and your business even more so than, let's call it, a manufacturing business that's creating a widget or a tool that somebody's buying in a store or off the shelf. And so my philosophy has always been, and I learned this many years ago, this idea of working together. And the goal of business is to bring people together to work together for the greater good, and ultimately to accomplish something far greater than anybody could accomplish singularly on their own. And working together really starts with treating everybody with dignity and respect. That doesn't mean you have to agree with everybody. That doesn't mean that you have to say yes to every request that's put in front of you, but it does mean that every single person is treated with dignity and respect as a human. And when you create a culture where people are put first, I believe that it ultimately can create an environment that A players want to be a part of. And that's really my job as the CEO, is ultimately to be the person that is demonstrating through my own behaviors, but demonstrating an environment that great people want to be a part of. I always say to our leaders, your job is to create an environment that A players are very comfortable in, and B and C players are quite frankly uncomfortable in. And if you can do that over time, our company is only going to get better. Yeah, Dare to Care in the Workplace, it's something that's near and dear to my heart, because if you want to create an exceptional business, you've got to have exceptional people. And exceptional people today have lots of options. As COVID has demonstrated, exceptional people are not shy to use their leverage to leave you if you are not creating an exceptional environment where they can be fulfilled, where they can thrive, and where they can do work that is meaningful and important and gratifying to them as well. So as leaders, our job is to continually be nurturing that environment where those A players can thrive and really blossom. It's my number one job as a CEO.
Absolutely, Adam. And I want to get more into your leadership journey, but we have to take a break. Coming up in the second part of my talk with Adam Witty, the founder of Forbes Books, Adam shares the lessons he learned from our friend, the great Jack Daly.
Jack said, your job is not to grow sales. Your job is to grow people that grow sales. And I extrapolated that to Adam. Your job is not to grow a company. Your job is to grow people that grow a company.
This has been Dare to Care in the Workplace. To connect with Kathleen, go to KathleenQuinnBotaw.com. Kathleen's book, Dare to Care, is available wherever books are sold. Dare to Care in the Workplace is a production of Forbes Books.